Our first biomechanics workshop is going to be a joint study of the head and neck. So if we look at where the vertebra insert into the head, we have this really unique pivot joint. Not only does it turn side to side and go back and forth, but it can come up at angles. It's a three-dimensional pivot, and the head balances on top of that. The head's a very weighted object. What we'll understand is when we see how to load the spine, specifically now with the cervical vertebra, we can take in a question mark to facilitate his movement. The difference, hyperfunction versus dysfunction. Hyperfunction is what I just demonstrated. Dysfunction, here, trying to crank, his spine loads and then no longer wants the motion to continue. Here, his body will move into a defensive position to get out of the position. Same thing here. His body will move defensively to prevent the damage. Dysfunction, trying to take beyond the range of motion of this pivot joint. In hyperfunction, we're going to load the particular joints to facilitate his motion. So if I take him from this angle and we look at this slowly, we start coming up in an angle. Now his joints are loaded, the vertebrae are loaded, and we bring him down towards the triangle point. Now, this is just a joint study. We'll give a few examples to see how this is relevant, hyperfunction versus dysfunction. This is going to be our first and primary training strategy in everything that we do. With hyperfunction, we take advantage of his energies, as opposed to dysfunction where we have to counteract them. Okay? So, we'll begin with, and come on this side. Bend over, come in for a cross face. Here, we pinch our elbow in tight. We're near his face. Now we could try and drive his head across, causing dysfunction. But look how the joint loads at his neck. If we bring our hand up to our shoulder, his neck naturally wants to continue in this motion. It loads his spine. So we keep in tight and we roll up. As his hands let go, we continue back down. Now in this case, I was taking my forearm and driving it across his nose because Ben and I are such close friends. Up and across. Once he's over, down, and back up. Another variation. Here, he's tied in. Now, let's look at this. I'm not trying to cause his neck to dysfunction. Grab a hold of the chin, drive the elbow down to cause his body to lift. Now, there's his triangle point. His body naturally has a tendency to move that direction. It can't stop it. The more he resists, the more he'll load his own joints. Another variation. Nope, grab on the waist. Instead of trying to work your way in to get this choke, bring your hand around across his jaw. Keep his head tight to load his spine. His triangle point up and tight. We'll try and do this again slowly. Around his jaw. Load his neck again, up and around. Take him to the triangle point just by keeping your forearm tight against his jaw. Now, this is going to be painful, so it's going to encourage him to move in that direction. Up, triangle point. Keep a hold of his head and squeeze. This is just an example from our biomechanics workshop on the neck pivot joint.